would like to call the December 6th meeting of the Lacey Planning Commission meeting to order, and I'm looking for an approval of the agenda and consent items.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have a full house now. Public comments. Anybody out in the public?
So we don't have anybody here at City Hall, but if there are any members of the public that wish to address the Planning Commission, this is your opportunity to do that. So if you want to use the raise hand function of the webinar, and then we can go ahead and bring you in. Looks like Janet. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. And if you want to unmute yourself, and you could also turn your video on, you can address the Planning Commission.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Can hear you. All right. Good evening. My name is Janet O'Halloran. I'm a resident of the city of Lacey, and I address the Planning Commission tonight for one reason. I'm aware of and I appreciate that your role on this commission is that of a volunteer. In your role, you may make recommendations to the city council. And although it is unlikely, there is a possibility that the commission may assume and carry the duties and responsibilities of the hearing examiner in land use matters per Lacey Municipal Code 2.30.210, or offer advice and counsel to the hearing examiner regarding land use policies and regulatory ordinances as outlined in Lacey Municipal Code 2.30.190 and 2.30.210, or similarly to the City Council under 2.32.030. I see that on tonight's agenda, you will hear a recap of the community meeting held at Salish Middle School regarding neighborhood commercial zones. I spoke with two of you that night about my experience with the Meridian Market and gas station conditional use permit. I was enlightened by the responses I received. I speak tonight to ask one thing of all of you. Please budget your time to become thoroughly familiar with any proposal, any policy or code, or any ordinance before you. You may discover that code intent language lacks implementation language teeth. You may discover that RCW chapter 42.36 regarding the quasi-judicial role has an exception to the ex parte communication, and as such can be cured. Listen carefully to guidance given to you about the fairness doctrine, especially what may happen if you recuse yourself, because if necessary, you might be asked to return and vote to achieve a majority of the quorum. And finally, please note that even footnotes contain critical information. Your role is important. Your recommendations and decisions have long-lasting consequences. Please budget your time to become thoroughly familiar with any matter before you. And finally, please be aware that citizens do listen to these meetings, even remotely, and hot microphone moments are heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. You can go ahead and get Janet back. So if you hit panelists on the left, you can, yeah. Change role to attendee. So if there's anybody else in the audience that wants to address the Planning Commission, go ahead and use the raise hand function. Not seeing any, so I think it's safe to say we can go ahead with the rest of the meeting, Dave.
Okay, we will move on to commission members report. Peg, anything?
I don't know that she can hear us.
Oh, she has her hand up.
She can't hear.
He's pretending to be Mickey Mouse. Okay, Gail. Unmute yourself.
Nothing.
Oh, Kathy,
Nothing yet.
all right, Mark,
No report.
Nothing yet for me.
okay,
First official meeting.
okay, and we'll do some introductions. Here,
Just that the City Lights Parade, or the light parade stages in front of my house on my block. And it's such an exciting thing every year to get to watch that parade. And so it was so exciting last night, even despite the rain, that they were able to have this wonderful event for the city. So that was a great opportunity.
okay. Eddie,
I was gonna say something very similar to Carrie, and I went to that event last night too, and it's just a fun little night. My wife likes to go to it, and we go pretty much every year. It's great that the city puts that on, so it was a lot of fun.
all righty. I have nothing to report, and we should introduce our two new members. I'll let them introduce themselves. Go ahead. Kathy, since you're right there.
Hi,
Introduce-
everybody. Sorry, I'm not there in person. We have stuff going on at the office, and so I assumed nobody wanted to risk me being around. So, hi virtually to some of you. I've worked with quite a few of you on the commission before, so really happy to see some of you, and really excited to be back. I work for a local engineering and planning firm. I previously served on the commission for 6 years, actually, so it was quite a while, and I sadly needed to not apply to return due to family issues, but very happy to be back and work with all of you wonderful people again and getting to know you new planning commissioners. So thanks for having me.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Judy Doyle, and this is my first official meeting. I did attend the event at the Salish Middle School, which I thought was very well done, and I got a lot of good feedback from, I live in Meridian campus, so it was very convenient. I heard a lot of positive feedback from the opportunity people had to go through the information stations. And I appreciate that even some members of the public were here to talk about it tonight too, but I'm really excited to be a part of this, and thank you for inviting me to join.
All right. I'm Dave Wasson, and I am the chair. And
Julian McMichael, first term.
I'm Eddie Bishop. I live in Lacey. I live off College Street, down by the school. And this is my second term on the commission.
Gail,
I'm Gail Madden. I'm the vice chair. Hi, Kathy. Haven't seen you for a while. And I live at Panorama.
okay. Peg can't talk still, right? Peg Evans Brown, there she is. Happy as can be. Okay. Mark,
I'm Mark Meininger, and I've been on the commission for about 4 years or so. I live down near Pattison Lake on Mullen Road, so I'm part of the urban growth area. I'm a member. I think there's 2 of us that are urban growth area members. Anyway, welcome aboard. Welcome, Kathy.
Stop. All right. Thank you. Now we will move on to department report. Yeah.
I'll turn it over to Grant. I think Grant has
Okay, Grant.
at least one thing to report on.
Good evening. I do have just one thing to report out. If you've been following the potential purchase of the Days Inn for first an extended shelter and then ultimately to be used as permanent supportive housing, the city council did authorize the signing of that memorandum of understanding with the county and Commerce. So that's moving forward. There's no definitive next steps, but I mean, there's next steps, but nothing looming. But that has been approved by all the entities involved. So moving forward, and we've had a couple, in fact, the same night as the open house at the Salish Middle School. We the next day we had a open house on the potential acquisition and use of the facility, and that's online on our website if you would like to find out more about the concerns and the answers and what the proposal is. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Great. I would tell you that Rick says hi to everybody. He will be, if you're not aware, he'll be he's been appointed interim city manager. So he'll be stepping aside from pretty much everything planning commission. And so he just wanted to make sure he said hello to everybody and that he'll keep in touch. So next is new business. New business, the Lacey Midtown and Depot District implementation. Sarah. There she is. You're up. You gotta unmute yourself.
Yep. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Schelling. I'm a senior planner with the Community and Economic Development Department. And I'm here tonight to talk with you a little bit about the Midtown branding effort. I'm going to share my screen. I'll go for spend just a few minutes here, and then I'll turn things over to Wesley, who can talk about the Depot District. Okay. Let's see. Does everybody see my screen? I just have to figure out how to get my slideshow going. Okay. Okay. So I'm here tonight to give you an update on the Lacey Midtown branding project that has been underway in the city since 2017. And just by way of some background, for those of you who are unaware of it or just need a little bit of a refresher on it, I'll give you a little bit of background on Lacey Midtown and what was or where Lacey Midtown, the idea of Lacey Midtown and the area came from, and what we're doing with branding. So Lacey Midtown is the area of the city of Lacey, which was formerly the Woodland District. Are my slides showing as individual slides or as?
It looks, we can just see the whole slide deck, Sarah.
Okay, all right, let me try again. All right.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. So Lacey Midtown came from, there's been 20 years of planning in the Lacey for a Lacey downtown. The idea of Lacey Midtown really was developed from Woodland District planning, and Woodland District was an area of the city of Lacey that you see here on your screen that starts at essentially 3rd Avenue, runs down to Pacific Avenue, heads west towards Sleater-Kinney, and then up towards I-5. And for those familiar with the city has generally lacked a downtown. And in the early 2000s, a planning effort, or maybe even the late 90s, a planning effort came underway with the Downtown 2000 plan, or with the Downtown 2000 planning effort as a way to create an area that could be the city's downtown. Part of that planning, it was a wide community effort that recognized the area of what was the Woodland District as an area for a potential downtown. Out of that community planning effort came the Downtown 2000 plan, and that Downtown 2000 plan spoke to a vision for the Lacey downtown, or the Woodland District, which was essentially to create an area that had 18-hour-a-day vibrancy with services for all the residents of Lacey, places for people to live, play, work, have all the elements of a traditional downtown. Like I said, that started 20 plus years ago, and efforts for planning Lacey's downtown have continued ever since. In the 2010 timeframe, we did a Woodland District refresh, which we went back out to the community and confirmed the vision that the city wanted to see for the area. The vision that was espoused by the Downtown 2000 plan was still valid. So after that point, we really took steps to figure out a way to bring that vision to life. And part of that effort was going through a strategic planning process, which identified 25 strategic actions that the city could take to really create a downtown for the city. So those efforts at planning have continued. One of the strategic actions from the strategic plan was to brand the Woodland District, create a new brand that brought some excitement into the area. So in 2017, we put together a steering committee and created a group that would look at how to brand the Lacey Woodland District and make people really recognize it as the core of the city of Lacey. The Woodland District was known, or then became known as Lacey Midtown, which is what we've been calling it since about 2018, 2019. And I think, Dave, you're on the Planning Commission. You were vital in coming up, helping us come up with the name Lacey Midtown. And now what you're looking at on the screen is the brand implementation. These were the priorities. This is the priorities to implement the brand that was created in 2017 with that stakeholder steering committee. We got underway in 2018, 2019 to start with some of our kind of low-hanging fruit priorities, things that would be easy to accomplish. We could get the name Lacey Midtown out there and start getting the area to be recognized. So right in about February of 2019, we had a plan to get utility box wraps and banners for pedestrian light poles with a logo, the idea for Lacey Midtown being an innovation district with a logo, Live, Learn, Earn, Create. We started to put together an RFP to have a design created for utility box wraps. That was in February 2019. We had some money set aside. The city manager or the council dedicated some money for those wraps. And we all know what happened in March of 2019. And here we are today, 2.5 years, almost 3 years after the start of the pandemic. And we're now actually getting to the point where we're going to be putting the brand implementation strategies into effect. And we're starting with utility box wraps. So for the last few months, Donna Feliciano and I and Ashley Smith from Public Works have been working on putting together the RFP and the design for utility box wraps that you will see throughout the district. You've seen, I'm sure, throughout the area, utility box wraps in other jurisdictions. Often it's artwork, sometimes it's images or pictures, but that's what we're going to plan on doing in Lacey Midtown. The idea is to have the name Lacey Midtown, an innovation district, and some images that help speak to what you can find in the area. There are 8 wraps in the district, or 8 major utility boxes, public utility boxes that will be wrapping. And this map shows the locations. There's 2 here at City Hall, one at the library, one up at the corner of 3rd. There are several along 6th Avenue, and then a few down Slater Kinney and on Pacific as well. This was the original design of the utility box wrap. When we first presented this idea back in 2018, we got the response that it looked a little bit institutional, so we've tried to go away from that and have come up with something a little less institutional and more, I think, better. We did an aerial photo We'll have the Lacey Midtown and Innovation District logo on the front. This will be the front side of the box. And then along one of the narrow sides, we'll have images taken from around the district, things of like the library. This photo here is somebody working in Lacey Makerspace. We'll have some folks working to kind of represent the earn element of the Live, Learn, Earn, Create slogan. And then we'll also have some activities in the park. Here's just another example of what the images will look like or could look like on the utility box wraps. And then here's one kind of everybody's favorite. We have the girl in Huntermore Park. For the Learn, we are going to have some images of St. Martin's or SPSCC, just to recognize that those are some assets in our district. And we'll have those wraps placed in areas that are adjacent to the universities. So the next steps, those are our draft guideline, or our draft images. We're working with a consultant right now, or a graphics company right now, and they're going to finalize the graphic for us and get us some mock-ups. We'll work with that vendor on getting we've finalized the graphics, finalized the graphics. We have the locations, we've selected a vendor. Our next steps really are coordinating with our Public Works Operations Department and getting our mock-ups from the vendor to make sure that they look like what we want them to look like. The other thing that I will note on the image is we will have a QR code, and that QR code is intended to point back to a page that we're going to, excuse me, a web page that we'll put up attached to our community development page that gives information about Lacey Midtown. It'll link back to some of our planning documents, as well as potentially have a list of services and restaurants and things to do in Lacey Midtown. So people walking by, driving by can scan that QR code, bring that up on their smartphone and see some of the things that they can do. And that's a page that we intend to keep growing as the activities in Lacey Midtown and the services continue to grow in Lacey Midtown as well. We plan on having our target launch for this is early 2023. That's barring another pandemic or other staffing issues that we're kind of we've run up against in the last few years. But Lord willing, we'll have the utility boxes wrapped here in the next couple of months and get really started with branding the district. And following that, the images, especially the portion of the wrap that has the pictures, could be also used as banners throughout the district as well to help market. And so banners would be our next step in the branding and implementation of the branding program. And just for some general awareness about some of the other things that are going on in Lacey Midtown. So you're all very likely aware of the new apartment building that's opened up on 6th Avenue. MJR is the developer on that. MJR really has bought into the vision and the brand, the brand idea for Lacey Midtown. They've bought much property in the Huntermore Park area, and they have a tentative plan. You see Huntermore Park here. This is looking at Huntermore Park from the west towards St. Martin's. MJR developers, the same developers who built the new 6th Avenue apartment building, are also looking at, or they've purchased the property behind Huntermore Park and are looking at, they have some tentative proposals to put in more residential, up to 600 residential units in these 2 blocks, keep some office and put in apartment units, as well as some ground floor retail along that 6th or the 7th Avenue frontage along Huntermore Park. And so one of the main priorities of the strategic plan is figuring out how to get more residential into the Lacey Midtown, and MJR has bought into that vision and is really, I think, trying to help us get to that, to realize that portion of the vision. People obviously are going to bring life and energy and enthusiasm to the district, which will really help us begin to achieve that vision. With that, that's all I have for you. If you have, this is a picture of the 6th Avenue apartment building. They do have a tap room that's going to open sometime in the next few months as well. So that apartment building has been a welcome, a nice addition to 6th Avenue. If any of you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, or I can turn things over to Wesley.
I had a- I
Okay.
had a question. Do I remember some special signage that was being worked on within that district to point like to the innovation district or some particularly, what do you call that? Wayfinding signage stuff?
We haven't, that's not, I'm gonna scroll back to our implementation schedule. That's a good question. So we did have, there are some implementation items that talk about monument signs and monuments with ped arching, and then typical pedestrian wayfinding signage. So yeah, that is on the implementation schedule. A little bit further down, it looks like it's number 4, a little bit further down on that implementation schedule. But yes, we had talked about doing the wayfinding signs, pointing out the library, the way to City Martin's SPSCC, but we haven't progressed to that at this point.
And could you Sarah, could you remind me what the council budgeted for this first phase?
For the utility, we're doing it project at a time. For the utility box wraps, I believe the budget is $15,000.
Can I have a question? I think they look really nice, but what are they made of and how do you stop people from tagging them?
They'll be vinyl, and I don't know how you stop people from tagging them, but they'll be vinyl, and they'll be something that can be hopefully be easily cleaned. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, Sarah, this is Judy. I saw that you had representations of the images on your box wraps, so that this is still in the works. I couldn't really make out the detail, but is someone factoring in some representation in there, diversity with representing Asian and Black and those kind of images to really reflect Lacey in that?
Yes, that's certainly something we've, as we're looking through the photos, that we're really trying to make sure that we represent, that we include various different individuals from all walks of life that would be representative of the community.
Thank you.
Does anybody have other questions for me? Right, I will stop sharing and turn things over to Wesley then.
Good evening, Lacey Midtown. So interesting, so amazing. Looking forward to see how that develops. My name is Wesley, and I'm here to talk about the Depot Subdistrict area, which is a little bit east of Lacey Midtown. Just a little bit of background, particularly I'm focusing on the lot that is owned by the City of Lacey, that is on Lacey Boulevard between Lebanon and Clearbrook, over there on Lacey, between Lacey and Pacific Ave. So that location is owned by the City of Lacey. It's also where we put the depot replica, as well as the train theme playground. So if you have either drive through either Lacey Boulevard or Pacific, you might have seen that. That's also the future location for the Lacey Museum. According to my understanding, the museum is about 3, 4, 5 years away from going vertical. So in the meantime, we have this piece of land, and as part of the trying to figure out what to do with that, one of the things before I even arrived to the City of Lacey is to establish a place that is engaging, that is a destination place. And so to do that, while we wait for the the museum is to maybe do a food truck. So we launched that food truck court in May of 2021. And primarily, it is a lunchtime affair, 2 to 3 vendors per day. And we have about 5, 6 trucks that was there on a rotation basis. Typically, they make about 200 to 300 a day, each truck, selling just lunch. The city provided no fee parking, which meant any truck can park there free of charge. Made restroom as well as water available to the vendors. Trash service was available, and electrical connection was also available to all the vendors. In collaboration that year, we worked with Park and Rec to organize 2 family entertainment events in the afternoon to bring in more people and more customers to the vendors. So the way in which I approach or recruited the vendors, just for your information, is that in order to operate a food truck or a food trailer, you have to get permission besides L&I for approval. You need to get a permit or operating license from the Thurston County Health Department. So I went to those guys and I asked them to give me a list of all the trucks that are currently operating in Thurston County. I emailed them, I called them, and were able to recruit about 5 or 6 vendors for 2021 when we started that launch. So in terms of participating in the program, I mean, again, they need to show that they are a legal operating with the license to do so from Thurston County. They have to have insurance. They have to have the City of Lacey business license, as well as filling out an application and signing the application, which states some of the procedures and policies of operating on the permit, the parcel. And then during the winter of 2021 and even early spring of 2022, the old building that was there on 5700 Lacey Boulevard was torn down. The lot was clear, and they put gravel over the whole lot from Lebanon all the way to Clearbrook. We added more electrical outlets to the place, and then we also provided customer parking, identified those parking areas, as well as providing other parking spots for customers as well as visitors to park. So then in June of 2022, we relaunched the program again. This time we were looking at more learning from last year. We decided to do more of a 2 types of vendors. One is permanent vendor, which can park there every day, as long as they would be willing to sell 4 days a week, as well as we also recruited rotation vendors that would come less than 3 days a week and would have to leave if they don't do consecutive sales there. So with that in mind, we were able to recruit 4 vendors that was there permanently and currently still are selling at the site right now. We also have about 3 more rotating vendors that were there. Depending on what day they will come and sell and leave. And in terms of our operations, we asked them that the park open from 7 to 9, and this is usually summer hours. So use some of them, like the permanent vendor will be open from lunch, dinner as well, so all day. So they have been very appreciative of that time frame. As for the city, again, we provide the water, the restrooms, the electrical, trash services. We also, this year, we put sunshade over some of the seating areas so that they could, their customer could sit there and eat during their lunchtime or dinner time, whatever they prefer. And then for that, all that service, since starting August, we started charging them $75 for the month. So each vendor have to pay $75 for the month to use the location, to park at the location. Even for 1 day or 30 days, up to them how many days they park, but it'll be $75. So during the 2022 season, we partnered with a local event organizer and stood up 3 pop-up markets on a Sunday afternoon, one Sunday a month. And that event not only draw a lot of local residents to come out, but also created more customer for the vendors that are there. So that was a great event. We had like 3 or 4 of those events throughout the summer. We also work with a local car club and invite them to come out and park their car there and showcase their car, which bring out more local community members to show up, engage in the different community members and share their love of cars. So that brought a lot of customers to the vendor as well. We also have Park and Rec organized 2 events at that location. So that also brought in some more present to the area. So overall, I think it was a very successful second year. And then just a couple months ago, as the sun come down, we were able to put on overhead lights to the area. So as you drive by, you can see evening lights, make it a little bit more festive and helping out with the customer, the vendors that are still there. So it give a nice ambiance to the area. So going forward in 2023, continue to work toward making a destination place, a place-making location where continue to add more services and amenity to the location. One of it is looking at potentially installing electrical posts at each of the vendors' parking space. Right now, they have to have extension cord to connect. So we wanted to reduce that risk of getting it stolen or getting cut or getting driven over. So we would like to install electrical posts at each of the parking space. We're looking at potentially putting a gray water dump site on the lot, including a grease interceptors to help the vendors from not having to go to a commercial kitchen or a commissary kitchen to dump out their water, which from what I understand is cost and also takes a lot of time from them having to move their trailers and trucks to those other places. So we put it in as a request to our public work to see if that's something they can do this winter. Continue to recruit more vendors. We love to have varieties of vendors. Like today, I got 2 vendors that are selling Mexican food, but I already told them we already have a Mexican food trailer already there. So we're trying to get a different variety of food trucks there. So we'll continue to recruit for other trucks to come and park permanently. We hope we have enough space for 6 spots, so we hope to get 6 permanent one next year, and we'll see how it goes. But that's my update for the Depot sub-district, particularly on the Depot food truck project. Any questions, comments I can answer?
I had a question. This is Dave Wasson. Do you imagine this summer Park and Rec doing twice as many events? Or more family stuff there?
I mean, we definitely will talk with Jan and figure it out. She's often short staff, and with summertime is where they have a lot of activities and event and not enough staffing. So we will, actually, I have a meeting with her tomorrow morning or afternoon tomorrow. We'll talk to her about some of those things. and figure that out. But yes, we would love to have more events there.
Maybe we could get a club to participate.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there must be something we can do to get some volunteers to participate in something like that, to get more community involvement.
Yeah.
So in addition to working with the Parks Department, Wesley's been working on potentially getting an event coordinator to help us manage both the food truck depot, take some of that off Wesley's shoulders, as well as help organize and attract events to the food truck depot for next year. So that's something he's been working on getting in place so that we not only have to rely on the Parks Department, who already manage a great number of tremendous community events, but also expand on that through our own resources to try to extend it. Is that all correct, Wesley? Yeah, just wanted to make sure that got
I
out there.
drove by there during the summer, and there was an arts and crafts event going on. I didn't know about it, and I don't know that it was publicized very well, but lovely, and more like that would be great too.
That must be one of our Sunday event that we held. And yeah, it's we have a lot of vendors that came up, and it's like Grant said, we worked through an event organizer, and she did a great job, and we hope to work with her formally with a contract coming out, and that way that she can do more of those type of events to get people out, and also encourage more entrepreneurships and other things that we talked about. So it's part of the plan.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to old business. Hans is going to talk about the Neighborhood Commercial District Forum debrief.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to cover the event itself and then a little bit of the initial results that we have so far. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. See if we can do that. Everybody see what should be the website? Wonderful. So I'm actually going to start on the Lacey homepage. So we have we built an neighborhood commercial district web page within the City of Lacey website. And right now it actually is scrolling across the top where you see this street cleaner right now. And then it also has a link down here in the featured resources and programs. But this is the actual page itself. It gives a little bit of a backstory on the neighborhood commercial district, some of the intent of that district, and kind of why we're looking at it the way that we are right now. Then it also provides links to the survey that we distributed at the actual event itself down here at the bottom. And then it also makes those posters that were at the open house event available for download. And then that's also available here. So you can scroll through those and get an understanding of what we talked about and what was covered, and then also participate in the survey as well. But yeah, so the open house itself was, I think, actually a pretty well attended, and thank you for everyone that was able to make it. Your participation was greatly appreciated. We got off to a little of a quick start there, so everybody that was able to attend, it's yeah, you were invaluable in that sense. So thank you. But yeah, so far to date, we have 451 responses to the survey. And that has been pretty steadily climbing since the actual launch of the survey. We launched it the night of the open house, and we're planning on running it through the end of December. So I'll have some early results for you, or kind of what we're initially seeing, but we won't have that full kind of deeper dive until after the survey is closed and we have time to really kind of read through every single response that we get. So that's that. We did also create a few different survey links so we can actually kind of track a little bit of where this feedback is coming from. So later on, we'll be able to look at where this feedback is and if that changes depending on what group of the community is providing that feedback. If it's maybe, you know, a regional thing as well. So based on what neighborhood commercial district you live closer to, there might be some varying preferences there. So that's all something that we can take a look at and really get into the details on that. So that'll be something that you can look for in the future when we do start sharing those results. But yeah, we had 20 questions in total. And I'm just going to run through them really quick, kind of high level. Again, we haven't spent the time to get all the way into them. There's a lot of open-ended answers. So we will take the time to actually read each one of those and really figure out what's going on with them, but haven't done that yet. So the first few questions actually were some kind of demographic questions. And these are really something that we include in most of the surveys that we do. Reason being that we want to make sure that we get a good representation of City of Lacey residents as a whole. So we can kind of match that up with what we know to be the demographic of the City of Lacey and kind of see what the representation is there. So that's something that you'll see in this survey, and then also any others that I probably ever will present to you. But yeah, so this first question was a kind of a life stage question. So we asked about if you're an adult with kids at home, retired, no kids at home, currently in school, something like that. So we got some feedback there. The majority of respondents did fall into that retired category. So right around 43%, in fact. And then we did ask what decade were you born? And it looks like the majority of respondents are 60 or over the age of 60. But there is a pretty decent split between that age 60 marker, so above 60 and below 60. So the one age group that we didn't get is that 2000s or later. So 22-ish or younger group. We are reaching out to the Youth Council in the hopes that we can kind of boost those numbers a little bit, but really that's the one that we just haven't had a whole lot of traction on that yet. So, and then moving on, we had the majority of respondents identified as female. That's something that we see in most surveys. Not really going to go into too much behind that, but yeah, that's the feedback that we've had on that one so far. And then we did ask a race or ethnicity question, and the primary response group was from those that identified as white or Caucasian, and then followed by Asian or Asian American, and then Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish. And then this is kind of where we transition more into more kind of your experiential questions as far as how Lacey residents interact with the community, their shopping habits, and then later on we get into more of the neighborhood commercial district specific questions. But we did ask do you live in Lacey? Do you work in Lacey? Do you live and work? And then do you none of the above kind of thing? So the majority of respondents did say that they live in Lacey, but we do see a drop off from that to those that identify as either working or live and working in Lacey. And I think that matches up pretty cleanly with those that identified as being retired in some of the previous questions and the age groups that we did get responses from. So that seems to track well so far with the information that we've seen. And then we did ask an income question that was pretty evenly distributed there. And then we did ask, so yeah, this is where we get a little bit more local as far as the questions. We wanted to figure out where these responses were coming from again. So we did ask, are you a member of a neighborhood association? The primary two that we did hear back from were Jubilee and Meridian campus, and they represent about 20% each. So around 40% of respondents live in one of those two communities. And then the next one was either they don't live in an HOA or a different one that they identified. The majority of the ones that we did list are north of I-5. As we held the first event at the Salish Middle School, we anticipated the majority of participants. Also with that, coupled with Meridian Market, the participation rate, and then north of I-5, we anticipated that to be higher. So that's where that's listed out. And then these another HOA categories, those are predominantly south of I-5. So from some of the more southern neighborhoods is what we're seeing there. And then we did ask a question. So this gets into more just day-to-day kind of shopping, groceries, home goods, questions like that. And we wanted to know how often individuals travel outside the city of Lacey for shopping or service related needs, groceries, home goods, restaurants, gyms, barber, that kind of thing. And what we did see actually there was that while the largest individual response was a few times a week, majority of respondents, when you add this all up, actually are a few times a month or less. So a lot of folks are actually still staying within the city boundaries to meet a lot of these shopping or service related needs in a day-to-day, month-to-month kind of time period. So that's something that's good to see. And then what are some of the most frequent retail or service related businesses you seek out in other communities? So this is kind of taking that question a step further. And so recognizing that folks do travel outside the city of Lacey to perform some of these shopping or service related activities, we wanted to learn specifically what kind of things are drawing folks to other communities that their needs really aren't being met within the city of Lacey. And what we're seeing there, the primary things that are listed out, and this is kind of a word cloud. So again, this was an open-ended answer. We had 371 of those. So, and a lot of those are multi-paragraph kind of answers. So it'll take some reading to really get the details out, but this is a word cloud. And after an initial scan, what we're seeing is restaurants, grocery stores are really at the top of that list. And then one common theme that we'll see throughout is something similar to Trader Joe's. You see a couple times pop up here. That was actually, I think, identified 68 times where actually somebody took the time to actually write that out. But other similar ones are things like home foods, kind of more Whole Foods. Spuds is another one. So filling that kind of grocery niche, but more of kind of a local produce kind of thing. That is a common theme that we're going to see throughout this, but this is kind of where that first shows up. Food co-ops, farmers markets still all kind of fall into that general category that would meet that need, but that's something that folks are consistently asking for within each one of this question and a few others that I'll call out later. And then this kind of gets a little bit more starting to look at neighborhood commercial markets, districts, specifically, and getting into that 15-minute kind of walking distance. The reason that we asked this question is that one of the intents of the neighborhood commercial districts is to fill some of those commercial gaps or islands that exist kind of farther out on the periphery. In the center of Lacey, we have our kind of commercial core, if you will. So a lot of those service needs are met within a pretty close proximity when you live kind of in the center of town. But as you get farther out towards the periphery, the neighborhood commercial districts are really intended to fill those kind of service deserts, if you will. Shopping deserts, if you will, and kind of provide some of those basic household needs so folks don't have to travel all the way into the center of town in order to get those maybe one or two items that they're looking for. So what we did find in this question is that the majority of folks do not currently live within a 15-minute walk of a commercial retail center, which is something that we could kind of know and anticipate, but it is still worth asking the question to find out what that breakout is as far as those that are participating in the survey. And then we did a follow-up question to this one as far as learning what are some of the limiting factors, if any, that currently prevent individuals from walking, biking, or traveling not in a individual vehicle to existing commercial or retail districts. And the dominant one being here is at the proximity. So the majority of folks, 63%, said that proximity was the biggest limiting factor is why they choose to drive or not elect other transportation options to get to these destinations. And then that was followed up by safety concerns. Right around that 50% mark said that safety was the follow-up reason why they elected not to travel. And we did ask one thing I will point out here is that a preference for driving was one that we wanted to find out about, and that was actually scored pretty low compared to these other two. So to me, at least at this stage, without going into the open ed responses, and we will do this, but that seems to speak to an interest or a desire to be able to do these things. But right now, whether it's infrastructure or proximity or other elements that have been listed out, folks are unable to currently, but there is that interest, which is something that's exciting and encouraging to see. But we did ask a clarifying question as far as why they gave these answers. And again, a lot of that was identifying missing connections, road speeds, distances, are the kind of those primary justifications of why folks felt unsafe electing to either walk or bike or travel outside of a personal vehicle. And then as far as question 12, what neighborhood commercial district do you live closest to? So this one was helpful in a couple ways. One, again, to when we look at the entirety of the survey responses and feedback, we can actually sort this based on where folks live, what neighborhood commercial district they live closest to. So if there is variation in responses, so one location, folks are looking more for one type of use than another, then that's actually something we can look at and compare to see if there's any differences based on where folks live geographically or what neighborhood commercial district has the potential to serve that neighborhood community, if you will. So the top two answers to this question were the neighborhood commercial district on Marvin and 41st, which is currently undeveloped. And then that one was followed by the one on Willamette, which is the Meridian Market. And then we did ask a question about in what ways can neighborhood commercial districts support and strengthen our neighborhood communities and businesses? Again, this is going to be a word cloud. We had 239 responses to that, so we will dig deeper. But as far as an initial scan of the comments that I have seen that we've received so far, common themes here included gathering spaces, community building, reduced traffic, non-motorized access, and then things like landscaping and preserving vegetation when possible. So those were all common themes that are borne out in these, but we will dig deeper and I'll give you a better answer once the survey is closed as far as what actually was expressed within this section. And then we asked, what types of stores or businesses would you like to see in these neighborhood districts? And again, this is one where the restaurants and then grocery stores were the primary two. And those grocery stores are, again, things like Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, farmers markets, Spuds, co-ops, that type of grocery store. So not necessarily kind of more department stores, but those specific, maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit more local groceries type ingredients type offerings. That's specifically kind of the type of grocery store that folks were looking for. So that's again, that common theme. And then other things that we saw in here were things like coffee shops, bakeries, actually saw libraries a lot, which was an interesting one. Not necessarily something you'd think about, or at least me personally, but that was one that was repeated a fair amount. And then things like pharmacies or clinics and things like that. So that's what we've seen so far in that, based on that response. And then we asked, this was a state your level of agreement question. So we said, please identify your level of agreement with the following statements as they relate to neighborhood commercial districts. And then we asked a range of questions. The middle ones here, so complement the established neighborhood character, emphasize and promote public gathering spaces, link to and enhance public transit infrastructure, and then encourage non-motorized transportation and target local neighborhood needs and services over regional ones. All of these questions were very popularly received, and these were actually a little bit more of a test case, as these are goals and kind of the intent of the districts as they're written today. So it was kind of testing to see if that intent really matches what the community is looking for. So those questions all seem to receive positive feedback. So that's kind of verifying that the current intent as it's written seems to mesh well with what folks are looking for. And then we did ask one question up here, which was to prioritize allowed uses over exterior design elements. And the reason that we asked this question is we wanted to get a little bit more information on what is kind of considered traditional zoning, which is a list of allowed uses, and you have to type each one of them out and say this is either explicitly allowed or not allowed, or more of a design approach where we might put some pretty specific design requirements, but provided businesses or potential uses are able to fit those design criteria, there's a little bit more flexibility in what's allowed there. And based on the feedback that we received from this one, it is a little bit more of a even distribution. So we had a lot of people that were both pretty strongly for it and against it, whereas the majority of these other questions, people were pretty much just strongly for them. So that is something that we do want to explore moving forward to figure out kind of what that balance is, and kind of offer a couple different alternatives and see what the community might prefer, see if there's a nice blend in there somewhere that we can achieve. And then the other one that we did ask that actually majority of people didn't have an opinion on this one. So it was allowing residential uses on the ground floor of buildings. So currently residential uses are allowed above the ground floor within neighborhood commercial districts, but we were interested in finding out more about if, depending on the site, there was an interest in allowing that residential use to start actually on the ground floor and work its way up. And the majority of folks were didn't have a preference for this one. So it is something that we're going to keep looking at, but so far it's been pretty neutral feedback on that possibility so far. And then can you think of any areas, any example areas or districts that you would like to see in neighborhood commercial districts modeled after? So this is a helpful one that kind of gets at that talking about code and what's in it and the requirements sometimes is a pretty abstract conversation to have with people. But sometimes it's a lot easier to ask, you know, are there other examples that you've been to or places that you've gone that really represent what you would like these districts to look like and feel like? So we actually got a lot of great examples in this question where folks actually identified, you know, neighborhoods, other districts and other communities, really actually around the world there were examples. So we're going to spend some time looking at those districts, diving into the code of each one of those and finding out if there's any common themes within them, anything that we could potentially borrow and bring into ours and use carrying forward. But yeah, like I said, we got examples from everywhere from, you know, our next door neighbors to all the way over in Europe and beyond. So it'll be something that's interesting to explore and kind of figure out if there's common elements in there. And then we did ask kind of the inverse of that, not the last question, but the one before it. What are some of the barriers to neighborhood commercial development in Lacey? What suggestions do you have for achieving the community or city vision for these locations? And in here, we did get a lot of feedback on Meridian Market specifically, and a lot of the displeasure with the potential gas station that's currently proposed there. But as far as other feedback that we received on that one, loss of neighborhood character, and then really if you reading a little bit more in detail on that, those kind of loss of neighborhood character responses, it's really kind of the residential character. So the not necessarily just a neighborhood, but residential specifically. So other uses adjacent to purely residential zones was something that folks identified as a concern. And then examples of that were kind of the warehouses and trucking or shipping impacts that are happening north of I-5 that are adjacent to residential areas. That's kind of one of those common themes that we see within this response. There's some warehouse there and traffic there. So that's one that we'll dig deeper into and figure out some potential solutions there. But so far, that's what we've heard for that one. And then we did ask a question, should any of these districts be redesignated or converted to another use? We asked this really because some of these districts were established a long time ago, and it is always a helpful check to find out, you know, are these the right use for this location? The strong feedback that we got at this one was the Meridian Market location. A lot of folks identified that as a location that should be used differently than what's currently proposed at that location, and then followed by the other two neighborhood commercial districts north of I-5 that are currently undeveloped right now. So those are the top three for that question. And then we did do use the space below to expand on any of those answers that you provided up here. So based on this feedback, is there any explanation of why you gave that answer? And again, Meridian Market and really kind of the use of a gas station was pretty strongly featured within the feedback that we've seen so far. Yeah, reading through my notes here. Yeah, so the gas station and just Meridian Market are primarily the theme of the response that we've seen so far in that one. And then we did want to do a final, just open-ended. Are there any other locations that could potentially make sense for neighborhood commercial districts within the community? And within this section, this is actually the most commonly skipped question within the entire survey. So a lot of folks just didn't provide feedback to it. But those that did, the brief review that I've been able to do so far, where a lot of them identified maybe zones that are already commercial or have some kind of commercial use in them. So we will look a little bit further on if there's any locations that are identified multiple times and kind of think about what that zoning is. But so far, what I've seen, the locations that were identified are already maybe have a commercial designation or have some kind of commercial use going on there. So we'll explore that further and figure out if there's any locations. And then the final question that we always ask is there anything that we missed or anything that you'd like to share with the project team? So we do have, everything else is kind of a leading question. We want to know specific answers to these questions, but we do want to make sure that we capture and all the feedback and really give folks as much of an opportunity to provide comments as possible. So this is really just that open-ended, share anything that you'd like to with the project team, and we'll review it and, factor that in with everything else that we're looking at. And in this section, again, Meridian Market and gas stations were pretty well featured. There's recommendations to improve upon neighborhood commercial districts and then also just other districts in general. So we did get some a decent amount of feedback that was specific to this project, but then also just kind of more Lacey as a whole. So we'll look at that as well. And then we did also get some comments of appreciation that we're taking the time to really do this. And then some recognition of the open house and how that is meaningful to a lot of folks and that they really do want to be a part of this process moving forward. So that was one of the other common themes that we did see in here. But yeah, after that, that was the end of our survey. The last one was just if you want to participate, we'll collect your information. We'll keep you in the loop. So I'm going to stop sharing, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. And we will be coming back after we close the survey and providing more of a detailed response and report for you.
I have a question about the two questions about do you shop frequently outside Lacey, and what is it you're looking for when you do that? And it always is astounding to me that people it's impossible to know whether you're in Lacey or out of Lacey, when you're shopping, because I notice on the list of places that people shop, clearly some of those locations are in the city, but I don't know how you construe those two questions, because it is extremely difficult to know if you're in the county, if you're in the city, if you're in Olympia, if you're in Lacey, who's paying the taxes.
I know our planning counter can attest to that. A lot of times one of our first things that we do is when we get a phone call or somebody come in, we do have to find out if they in fact do live in or wish to conduct business or whatever it may be in Lacey. And, there is a portion of the time that we are redirecting them either to Thurston County or one of our neighboring jurisdictions. So that is something for sure that is common. We did have, while we didn't see it on this side, the survey and the open house and anywhere that the survey was being completed did have maps going along with the questions. So that was available, given it is still difficult to know sometimes if you are in Lacey or not. So that's definitely something, but there were maps available to help with that or to the degree possible.
I did have something too. It's I guess a question of a theme that kind of came up when I was talking to residents who were concerned about the effects of some of the growth and development and the changes to the feel of the neighborhoods. And I'm right next to Lacey Midtown, just a block away. So I mean, I love my area, and I love the being able to walk and being able to participate and having all this growth that's actually, you know, building up our city and making it nicer. I moved there specifically for the walkability, but you know, as I see, like, my neighborhood is developing, people developed the lot next to mine where there was 1,000 square foot house, and now there are 2 massive duplex buildings. And you know, part of them having that approved was that they had to plant 4 trees. And it was very bizarre to see that these trees were planted close to the house and underneath power lines. And then, you know, a short while later, after the city had approved everything, they went and cut them down. So now there's no trees on this lot that were part of the plan to be added. And that was something that I also saw echoed this the evening that we had the open house, was that a massive swatch of trees had been cut down to build a parking lot, and that allowed a lot of light pollution and was really negatively affecting the people that lived in those houses. And I know, being in a little tiny house with 13 windows, because I did ask the construction crew if I could go see, like, where are these windows? How much of my lot could they see? And it was every inch of my property, which was a private, you know, as a single mom, this was my whole world that I invested in my home. And all of a sudden I have 13 windows looking at me, light pollution and no privacy. It was devastating. And then to see the trees cut down. So I totally empathize with these people who have these homes, and they were saying, well, these warehouses were coming up and now the trees are going, and we're a tree city. And now there's light pollution and I can't sleep. So the question is, how do we help our neighbors with code enforcement, and how do we develop and grow while honoring the privacy and the investment and the community members who really make Lacey, you know, a great place to live? And is there something that we can do, or as a planning commission, to support our residents who are frustrated by some of the growth?
For sure. I think that that's definitely one of the things that we're going to be looking at in great detail, especially with this being that neighborhood commercial interface and emphasis. I think that is even a bigger priority than in some other districts. What I do know is that there are requirements within our code, both in neighborhood commercial and in a lot of other commercial-esque districts that have setbacks and additional setbacks and vegetation requirements when they end up directly next to residential uses and things like that. That being said, it's definitely something that can be looked at more in detail as part of this project and potentially expanded upon to really ensure that privacy there. But yeah, it's an ongoing balance that we navigate with. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to add more to that?
Excuse me, I'll add that, you know, I think it's probably worth, you know, all of the planning commission members that were present that night to maybe give a little bit of your, you know, your feedback, your you know, what you heard, because I think we were all having conversations with people, you know, the entire night. And I think that'd be good to kind of debrief the planning commission on that. But one of the things I wanted to make clear is, you know, and I heard a lot of different things, a lot of frustrations regarding things like, you know, tree removal and development and truck traffic and truck idling and backing beepers and, you know, a lot of things. We need to be clear that, you know, this really the focus of this process is related to neighborhood commercial. And so, things like, this process will not address truck traffic in Meridian campus. It'll address the neighborhood commercial sites. Things like that are bigger questions that'll have to wait for our comprehensive plan update. Granted, that is coming soon. We'll kick that off here after the first of the year, and we'll be asking those bigger questions as a community, like how would you want to see Lacey, grow and develop in the future? So keep that in mind, that this is more targeted, more specific when it comes to neighborhood commercial, but we will be asking those bigger general questions when it comes to the comp plan update here after the first of the year. So other planning commission members, I think this would be a good time to kind of give your impressions of what you thought, what those conversations that you had, and maybe do a little bit of a debrief on things right now too, if you had things to add to that.
I sensed from a couple of people that I spoke, there's some hostility and just kind of borderline rudeness in approaching me about it. And I think a lot of people were frustrated by the gas station and what occurred there, and decisions being made that they weren't happy about. And then pointing back at the planning commission as being the culprits, kind of struck me as a little strange, but I'm sure we played a role in it, but not having counsel there to be able to handle their questions. I'm not sure, I don't quite understand that. Maybe they're just not allowed to attend those kind of functions, but it seemed like their concerns were more directed at council than they were anybody else. Anyway, that was the feeling that I got.
So I'm happy to share a little bit more on this. Leading up to the event, I sensed a lot of enthusiasm from my neighbors and from people I interact with in the community in other roles. And there was a lot of excitement about they want to hear our voice. And I thought we had a great turnout. I happened to be standing by the Meridian Market poster. So the comments to me were a little skewed in that direction as well, but I was really comfortable with it because that's big on my radar. And I think the people that did share their comments with me were really concerned about what that gas station was going to do to the neighboring homes and the playground. But I also heard issues about the existing warehouses that are there, and we can't influence that anymore, and the trucks, and some of them not abiding by the existing requirements. But overall, my takeaway was they wanted to engage with the city. They love the opportunity to survey. I want to see more responses between now and the end of the year, Hans. And one of my questions about your presentation was, could you go back and show us that early slide that you showed the places that are encouraging participation? I think you had a couple of places that are driving response traffic to the survey, because 400 responses is about 25% of homeowners in Meridian campus. And I think we can up that number. But I wanted to revisit your slide, if you could, Hans, about what sources are driving survey responses in.
Yeah, for sure. So I think if you can see that again. And this is, so based on the outreach that we have done, this is where we're receiving feedback from. So we've done a lot of social media pushes. We did mailers to everybody in the community. We also did a couple different posts and Thurston Talks, which were then picked up by the city of Olympia. Sorry, not city of Olympia, the Olympian. And then we also emailed all of our HOA contacts throughout the city. And then as part of the Meridian Market project, we did create an email list as part of that. So everybody that had previously signed up as part of the Meridian Market notification system were also included in this and notified about this. And then the actual open house itself. So those are those that actually showed up and either took the survey there in person that night or took one of the flyers home from that event and took that survey there. So we are still going to be hitting or boosting all of our social media notices, and then also on the website as well. And then we are going to be reaching out to the youth council. We don't have any from that yet. But trying to get that younger perspective as well is one of the things that we do want to do in between now and the end of the year. I know that there's a lot of holidays type activities that are happening between now and then. So that's going to be a little bit tricky to encourage folks to take time away from that to participate. But these numbers have been steadily increasing since the survey was launched. So that's a positive that we are still tracking. There's more and more that come in every day. I think we're right now averaging anywhere from 6 to 10 a day. So that's still.
Anecdotally, Hans, I see a lot of conversation on this topic on Nextdoor. Does City of Lacey have any sort of presence on Nextdoor to invite folks that are already engaged in the discussions?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I know that it is possible to create municipal accounts on Nextdoor, but I don't know if that's a format that we've used to engage with the community on before.
Thank you.
Dave, we're just kind of going around, and did you have anything to add
I
from?
really don't have anything to add. I spend a lot of time with angry people.
Yeah.
So that was most of mine. And people that were upset about all those 2 lots off the roundabout that lost all their trees, you know. Obviously, that one, the newest one, is totally open to all the warehouses now. And so, and then I did hear a little bit about the fact that everything is like apartments going in now. And so, of course, I shared, 20 years ago, you would have said just the opposite, everything's single family homes, but it's all perspective.
And Eddie, you weren't there, right? Kathy?
Yeah, I thought it was a fun way back into the commission to attend. I think that what I heard was exactly what I thought I would hear from exactly the people that I thought that would show. So I wasn't at all surprised. I think that most people were, they kind of came and threw their hands up. I had a lot of people come up and say, is it too late to make a change? The answer is yes, and they turned around and walked away. So I did stand next to the process board, and so I did talk about how the comp plan's coming and that this survey is actually where you have the input to make your voice heard. And so I think that was heard by a lot of people. And one thing I would like to ask Hans is a lot of the responses, we did an open house in that area. So a lot of the responses are coming from people that live next to that district. It would be really great because I live on the other end. I live, out towards the other districts, and there's almost no response with those neighbors. So I don't know if we can either extend the time of the survey, or if you are, because I think people need to be able to know it's here to answer. And I think we got a lot of responses from that one area because people are upset about the gas station. But by the end of the year, I don't know how much more you're going to get. And it would be a real shame to make policy decisions based on one neighborhood.
Definitely. I think that, early on in this process, we did decide that we wanted to go out multiple times to the community. And while we did start kind of north of I-5, as close to actually Meridian Market as possible, the intent is that we will do more of a broader outreach and do some locations in other parts of the community as well.
Before the survey closes? I thought you said it was closing soon.
So right now it is scheduled for the end of this year, but we can extend that if that becomes something we want to do. So we can definitely look at that. So the next kind of the general timeline is whenever the survey does close, we'll look at those responses and then go back out to the community again, basically just sharing the results of the survey and letting folks know what we heard. And then the point of that being is that folks will have an opportunity to either confirm that this is really kind of the message that they were trying to deliver or not. And part of that process, we are planning on going out to other locations within the community as well. But I'm open to options here as far as doing other events in other locations.
Yeah, so we really wanted to kick this off, as Han said, with the, the northeast area, kind of striking while the iron's hot, so to speak, while there, was obviously some, pent up frustrations and some concerns, and kind of run with a little bit of that momentum. And I think what's likely to occur is that, after we close this, the survey is that we may end up with standards or regulations that only apply to those zones that are going to be north of I-5, for example. And we would come back later and do additional outreach on those that are south of I-5. So maybe, asking direct surveys to those residents that live around those areas, and then, developing regulations around the ones that are to the south of I-5. It's a little bit difficult because there isn't a good one size fits all answer to this question. You have a much different geographic area in different areas of town. You have different traffic loads. You have different community character. You have, so it's hard to come up with that just one answer for all of our neighborhood commercial zones. So it's likely that we would, roll this out to other areas of town and maybe do additional surveying when we got to them specific to those areas. Because I think right now, neighborhood commercial is such a hot topic as a city, but it's really very specific to north of I-5.
But don't you feel like that creates a problem because you're skewing your survey results with people that are already irritated, even though their irritation may have nothing to do with the actual neighborhood commercial district? They're mad about trucks. I mean, it feels like, I understand what you're saying, but it also feels like you're going to get responses that may not really be reflective of a non-angry person.
That is potentially the downside, Kathy, of moving quickly on this, while temperatures are higher on this issue, is that we hear from the people that are displeased and not those that are fine with the decisions. People that are okay with how things have gone are just as able to participate in the process as those that aren't. And so, it's important to hear from everybody, but yes, you're right. We'll tend to hear those that have frustrations versus those that don't. Peg, I know Peg was there. Peg, do you have anything to add?
I talked with a neighbor and someone that I know about the Hicks Lake passage, and we talked about process. And there was still some irritation, and I think there was some other Hicks Lakes people there. That was not particularly pertaining to this neighborhood, but I was happy to see participation. There was another couple there who's sort of new to the neighborhood, and our conversation went towards joining the commission at some point. And Dave came along and was able to chat with them about that. So this whole outreach has multi-facets, and we want to look at the big picture as well as the specifics that we're trying to deal with here.
Anything else from?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, in speaking with a number of people there that night, there were quite a few people who were very appreciative of the idea of being able to provide their input. They liked the idea of the survey, and they liked the idea of being asked. Was pretty predominant there, along with, again, I mentioned some negative things earlier, but more people than those were really quite appreciative, and I think they participated well. And I think as many of those you can do, the better. I think it's really a positive thing that the city's doing.
Yeah, and really we set out to, here to not present too much information, but really just, be, have it be a listening session, I guess, for lack of a better term, so that because we heard, the obvious frustrations and those kinds of things. And so we wanted to provide that avenue and ability for people to come, and talk to us. And, we were there to listen. So, next step wise, obviously the survey will close by the end of the year, and we'll come back after the first of the year and provide kind of any, final results, as a part of that. We'll also then touch bases with planning commission on next steps. So obviously, we just started the conversation, and there'll be another event, likely probably early spring, to say, okay, hey, we've heard from, loud and clear what you want, what you don't want, and continue that discussion as far as ideas on ways that these areas can improve, how we might be able to, change our zoning language to reflect the community's desires for change. Maybe even looking at some of the actual zones, the actual pieces of property themselves, and say, are these appropriate still for these types of zoning? We've talked about that with Dave. Is this even a logical spot for neighborhood commercial, or should this be redesignated as something else, and should it go through that rezone process? So, at this point, we're still going to keep that survey open. We'll close that and then come back to planning commission and talk more about our next outreach event coming up in early spring, which will then kind of lead into some preliminary recommendations for what we can do to address some of those things. And the planning commission will be obviously, very involved in that process all the way through into the spring. So with that, happy to answer any other questions or
I definitely
comments.
felt that it was by the participation of the planning number of us that were there. It was a good process to get community input. So I'm hoping that we will do more of that.
Yeah. Well, and I know, Gail and Kathy both were, I think, involved when we did our outreach for our big comprehensive plan update almost 10 years ago now. And the struggle that we had in getting any outreach, not the outreach itself, but getting the feedback as a result of the outreach was so difficult. We wanted to have those community conversations. The community just didn't want to talk. And I think a lot of it is that we have so many new residents that have especially, landed in Northeast Lacey in the last 10 years that weren't there before, that we'll have definitely more, I think, going into future outreach programs, especially what related to the next big comp plan update. We'll have, I think, not as hard of a time this time coming up with, having those conversations and having people at events. I mean, 10 years ago, we had to essentially do a road show. We had to go, planning commission went on the road and went to meetings. We took meetings out to various elementary schools around to talk about people's neighborhoods and stuff like that. And we would still have 2, 3, 4, 5 people show up and talk about growth in their neighborhoods. So.
But that's why I think the ability to fill out an electronic survey, which we did during, COVID, sort of developed that much more than we had in the past, really allows people to get involved without having to go to the nearest elementary school if they haven't, they don't have kids, they haven't been in that place in, 25 years. I really think these surveys are good, and the longer we leave them open, the better,
Okay. We will move on. Communication announcements. Next commission meeting is a public hearing.
I think my announcement is, I think what we'll do is we're going to delay that until January. I talked to Doug Christensen.
Except Doug wants to delay it.
So that it'll give him a little bit more time to do some more outreach. So we'll likely cancel that next meeting. December 20th is just a few days before Christmas. So I don't think anybody would feel too bad if we had to cancel that meeting. So stand by. I'll let you know for sure. But at this point, it looks like we're probably most likely going to cancel.
Could you let us know pretty fast?
I'll do that.
Okay.
You can anticipate that it'll probably be canceled. I'll let you know for sure.
Meeting canceled.
Okay.
Okay. So our next meeting, who knows when that will be? Sometime in January.
January 3rd. Yeah.
Right. No.
All right.
I noticed the joint council planning commission is in February 9th.
That's correct.
Thursday,
Yeah. So that'll be February 9th. That's council work session night, so Thursday night at 6 o'clock, I believe. So mark your calendars for February 9th. That'll be the joint Plan Commission City Council meeting, and that'll be a pretty important meeting. The main focus of that obviously will be launching us into our next comprehensive plan update, and essentially establishing a 2-year work program for how we're going to accomplish all the work that needs to go along with that, and doing all the updates to our various comprehensive plan elements, and talking about community outreach and all those things. How do we do, engagement? So it'll be a fairly important meeting.
The meeting we have scheduled for the planning commission 2 days earlier, is that something, have we normally canceled the one right before? We've got one scheduled for the 7th
Yeah, we will likely cancel that one.
and just go on the 9th.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
question. I
yeah.
seem to recall that's what we normally.
Yeah, yep.
All right. Any other announcements? Well, happy holidays to everyone, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Peaceful, healthy solstice to everyone.
Yes, happy holidays, you guys.
Again, happy holidays, everyone.